Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for streaming with us today on ABC News Live. President Biden in isolation after testing positive for COVID. The White House saying he's experiencing mild symptoms. What we're learning about the president's condition as doctors treat him for the virus. Also ahead, the January 6th committee detailing the critical hours when they say the former president chose not to stop the Capitol siege. The harrowing accounts from two former White House aides and the revealing outtakes from Trump's address to the nation. Plus, deadly storms slamming the South as tens of millions of Americans suffer under heat alerts. Chief Meteorologist Ginger Z has the latest for us. But we do begin with President Biden now receiving treatment after testing positive for COVID. The president saying he is still working from the White House, though, and he's telling Americans he will be fine and not to worry. Chief Medical Correspondent Dr. Jen Ashton joining me now for more on this. Of course, he's telling us not to worry, Jen, right?
Yeah, Kira, I had to smile because it's like something we would say to one of our relatives, right?
Exactly. Don't worry. Everything's fine. Well, he is fully vaccinated. We talked about this yesterday when the news broke. You and I discussed all the good parts here. He's also boosted. He's in good health. But he is 79, right? And he's at higher risk for complications. Now, the White House says it's following protocols to protect other people from getting infected. So let's just talk about how important this decision is right now.
Well, first of all, remember, the White House is not like your house or my house, to state the obvious. There are a lot of people that need to be there. They need to work there. They need to be there not just for fluff, but not only to protect the president and care for the president, but to continue to perform the duties that go on every single day around the clock in the White House. So now it's about mitigating risk, protecting those people as much as possible. And as you've heard me say from the beginning of this pandemic, Kira, there's no such thing as zero risk. So likely their protocols involve increase in ventilation and distancing, minimizing the number of people that are coming into contact with the president, everyone wearing N95s, having the president masked if other people need to be in the room. These are common sense precautions that I would recommend to you if you had someone with COVID-19 in your house. It's just that this is a much bigger house.
Yeah, he's much bigger. And we also talked about this. The president was immediately given Paxlovid, which Pfizer says greatly reduces your risk of hospitalization. But if his symptoms were mild, do you think he really needed this antiviral to begin with?
Well, first of all, obviously, I'm not the president's physician. The president's physician obviously thought he needed it. And if the president were my patient, I absolutely would recommend Paxlovid for the patient. Let's go back to the FDA emergency use authorization for Paxlovid, which occurred at the end of December of last year. It was authorized for people at home with mild to moderate COVID-19 disease who were at high risk for developing complications of COVID-19. The president fits that criteria, definitely by age, but anyone, even younger people, if they have a risk factor that puts them at high risk for complications or serious COVID-19 illness like diabetes or obesity, absolutely they meet criteria, and in that case, the benefits far outweigh the risks.
Well, and we've talked also a lot about Paxlovid rebound. You take it and then you get COVID immediately after. Dr. Fauci experienced that. Our John Carl experienced that. I took Paxlovid. It helped me tremendously. My symptoms didn't get worse. So how often is this occurring? And, is this a concern for the president?
A lot of people are asking about that. I've also had patients question that for themselves when I've recommended Paxlovid. Based on published case reports, it's under 10%. It may be even 10%, let's say, but it's, hovers around 4, 5, 6% of cases. And what that refers to is patients take Paxlovid, their symptoms go away, they may even test negative for a few days, and then they get this rebound. Their symptoms come back, they test positive again. In some cases, their symptoms are worse. I want to be crystal clear. That is unpleasant. It's an inconvenience. But remember the goal of this drug. It's to keep people out of the ICU, out of the hospital, ideally, and to save lives. So when you talk about risk versus risk, the risk of Paxlovid, if you put it at less than 10% of a rebound phenomenon and the inconvenience, the benefits, survival, far outweigh that risk.
Point well made. Dr. Jen Ashton, have a fabulous weekend.
Thanks, Carrie. You too.
All right. Now to the other major story out of Washington. The January 6th committee closing out its summer hearings with never-before-seen video, the outtakes from a frustrated Trump as he addressed the nation, and also troubling witness testimony. Congressional correspondent Rachel Scott has more from Capitol Hill.
The never-before-seen video of Donald Trump 24 hours after his supporters stormed the Capitol.
Whenever you're ready, sir.
The outtakes obtained by the January 6th committee show a president who struggled to say the election was over and condemn the rioters.
To those who broke the law, you will pay. You do not represent our movement. You do not represent our country. And if you broke the law, you can't say that. I'm not going to. I already said you will pay. But this election is now over. Congress has certified the results. I don't want to say the election's over. I just want to say Congress has certified the results without saying the election's over, okay?
Sources say it took an hour for Trump to record a nearly 3-minute-long video. His daughter Ivanka heard from behind the camera.
Just take it out.
My only goal was to ensure the integrity of the vote. My only goal was to ensure the integrity of the vote.
The committee zeroing in on the 187 minutes between Trump's speech urging his supporters to march to the Capitol.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol.
And this video finally telling them to go home.
So go home. We love you. You're very special.
Accusing the former president of a dereliction of duty, saying Trump knew within 15 minutes of leaving the stage that the Capitol was under attack, but instead sat in his dining room and watched the violence unfold on television.
If the president had wanted to make a statement and address the American people, he could have been on camera almost instantly.
His former White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, says he pleaded with him to intervene.
I think I was pretty clear there needed to be an immediate and forceful response statement, public statement that people need to leave the Capitol now.
But advisors say Trump resisted, not even making a single call to military or law enforcement officials.
I can't think of anybody, on that day who didn't want people to get out of the Capitol once particularly once the violence started. No. I mean,
what about the president?
Yeah.
she said the staff. So I answered.
No, I said in the White House.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I thought you said who else on the staff. I can't reveal communications, but obviously I think, yeah.
Lawmakers say at the time the violence was getting out of hand, Trump sent out a tweet criticizing his own vice president for lacking courage. 2 Trump officials resigned immediately.
It was him pouring gasoline on the fire and making it much worse.
That was the moment that I decided that I was going to resign, that would be my last day at the White House.
Rioters chanted to hang the vice president. For the first time, the committee revealed distressing radio transmission from the Secret Service protecting Mike Pence.
If we lose any more time, we may lose the ability to leave. They are on the second floor, moving in now. We may want to consider getting out and leaving now.
One anonymous White House security official testified agents called to say goodbye to family members. The committee also highlighting the actions of Republicans. A call from leader Kevin McCarthy to Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner.
He told me it was getting really ugly over at the Capitol and said, please, anything you could do to help, I would appreciate it. And I got the sense that, they were scared.
And this photo of Senator Josh Hawley spotted raising his fist. A Capitol police officer told the committee that gesture riled up the crowd. Later, Hawley was seen fleeing for his safety as the mob broke in. In these newly released images, congressional leaders huddled together. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell on the phone with defense officials.
We need you to get the building cleared, give us the okay so we can go back in session and finish up the people's business as soon as possible.
Hours after the violence, Congress certified the election for President Joe Biden, and Trump walked back to the residence with one final comment.
As he was gathering his things in the dining room to leave, President Trump reflected on the day's events with a White House employee. President Trump said nothing to the employee about the attack. He said only, quote, "Mike Pence let me down."
Former President Donald Trump released a statement attacking Sarah Matthews, one of the witnesses. As for what comes next for the January 6th Select Committee, will they announce there will be more hearings in September? Lawmakers say they still have more work to do. Kira.
They sure do. Rachel Scott from the Hill for us. Thank you. ABC's Zareen Shaw now joining me for more from our nation's Capitol Hill. Capitol here. A lot of big mouthful there. All right, Zareen, so many big moments in this hearing. What were your key takeaways?
So many big moments. The key takeaway, I can say it in 4 words. This is not over. It's not over for the committee, and it's not over for Donald Trump. The committee says they plan to meet again in September, and Donald Trump again was relentless last night. But this is what the committee drew out during that hearing last night. For over 3 hours, they painted a picture of a president who was not taking any action. Not to the people at the Capitol. Instead, he was calling senators. He was trying to convince them to get on his side to help him overturn the election. And I also thought it was really stark. The video that we saw on January 7th, the 3-minute video of Donald Trump talking about how there was needed to be a seamless transfer of power. Well, we saw the outtakes last night. Now, the committee says those outtakes went on for almost an hour. So we learned a little bit on what was on the other 57 minutes that we never saw. And one of the things, you saw it in Rachel Scott's piece, I mean, it is really stark. He says, this election is over now. And then he looks at the camera and he says, I don't want to say that. You know, and another thing that I think really stood out, at the end of the day, the committee talks about how he looked at the staffer on January 6th. And instead of talking about anything that happened at the Capitol, instead of talking about the Capitol police officer who died, anything else that went on, he said, Mike Pence let me down.
And former White House counsel Pat Cipollone also appeared very uncomfortable, testifying that Trump didn't pick up the phone to call anyone who could have helped call off the violence, despite pressure from his closest advisors, even family members. And the committee established that it was Vice President Pence ordering military assets to secure the Capitol. This is significant as well.
So significant. I mean, Donald Trump was the commander-in-chief, and you saw that moment in Rachel Scott's piece. I mean, it was the silence that really stood out, right? Cipollone just couldn't say what it appeared what he wanted to say. I mean, it got a big reaction in the room last night, according to our reporter there. I mean, Cipollone said the words, I can't think of anybody who did not want people to get out of the Capitol, especially when the violence started. And then the committee asked him, what about the president? And he fumbled it. You know, he looked at his lawyer. They had a conversation to the side. It was assumed that he couldn't say what he wanted to say because of, you know, client-attorney privilege with Donald Trump. And then he started saying, obviously, you know, and he did not finish his sentence. I mean, this was a president who was in his dining room as everything was unfolding, while others were trying to convince him to take action.
So what's next for the committee's investigation? More hearings come the fall?
So Chairman Thompson says that they're going to meet again in September. He said last week they were going to release an interim report. It's assumed that a lot of those hearings will perhaps revolve around that report. Kira.
All right. Zareen Shaw. Thanks so much, Zareen. All right, let's bring in ABC News political contributor Sarah Isker, former Trump administration official, for just more perspective on all of this. So, Sarah, we saw those outtakes from Trump's remarks on January 7th, showing that he didn't want to say that the election was over. It was clear. He was getting frustrated. So what did you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, there were many more shocking things that we learned. We've been waiting for the draft, those outtakes, really since they first subpoenaed the National Archives. Donald Trump, of course, tried to block those, claiming executive privilege. A court ruled that the committee was going to get access to those tapes. So we've known from the beginning that these tapes were going to show something that perhaps the president didn't want out there publicly. And now we see it. It was that he didn't want to say the election is over. Now, of course, what the committee has been so productive at, I think, is making that political case against the president, what would be impeachment level charges under the Constitution. This, however, does not go to the legal case against the president that the Department of Justice appears to be pursuing really on that fake elector side. We know that they've subpoenaed or searched about 15 people close to the president, looking at what they knew, what they said around submitting that fake slate slate of electors to the National Archives and to Congress. So the January 6th committee, again, making forceful arguments on that political case, why he shouldn't be president again, for instance. But the legal case continues in the Department of Justice, and I think we'll see more from that in the future as well.
Well, that's going to be interesting to follow for sure, especially if they pursue criminal charges. Well, the House GOP called witness Sarah Matthews, who we saw testify, just another liar and pawn in Pelosi's witch hunt. Now, it's a since-deleted tweet. Should the party be attacking witnesses' credibility on Trump's behalf?
They had a few tweets that they had to delete last night. They also said this whole thing is heresy. Unclear whether they knew that heresy and hearsay are different, whether it was a typo. And then, yes, as you said, they attacked one of the witnesses who actually works for them. They deleted that tweet as well. Important if you're going to troll to check whether someone works on staff and do a spell check, things like that, as it turns out. The thing that the committee has talked about witness intimidation coming from people close to Mark Meadows or Donald Trump is something that I expect them to explore more when they come back in September. Certainly the House GOP Twitter feed, not necessarily trying to intimidate witnesses, but it does show the pushback that these witnesses get. They're leaving their careers on the line in many cases, leaving decades in Republican politics to tell the truth to the American people.
So pushing this forward, the split between Trump and Pence is already playing out on the campaign trail. Both are reportedly considering running for president in 2024. How do you see this playing out?
Well, Mike Pence taking an interesting tact here. They'll be in Arizona at the same time with their different Senate candidates that they've endorsed. And then they'll both be in D.C. Donald Trump for his first speech since leaving Washington, D.C. And Mike Pence speaking to the Heritage Foundation. Mike Pence, on the one hand, trying to draw that contrast with Donald Trump. He spoke to House Republicans this week. We're told he got a standing ovation, that he was thanked for his courage on January 6th. But Mike Pence himself has actually not talked often about what happened on January 6th. He said, of course, it's not up to any single American to decide the outcome of election, that would be un-American. But Mike Pence not polling anywhere near the top of the heap for 2024 compared to someone like Ron DeSantis. I wonder whether Mike Pence would have a more productive role on the Republican side of getting people together in that room and saying only one person can run against Donald Trump if we want him not to be back in the White House in 2024.
It's going to be an interesting couple of years. Sarah, thank you. And a programming note, Republican committee member Adam Kinzinger will be on This Week with George Stephanopoulos this Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern on ABC. Coming up, deadly storms slamming the South as brutal heat scorches more than 100 million Americans. Chief meteorologist Ginger Z has the latest as soon as we come back. So glad you're streaming with us on this Friday. Well, deadly storms are slamming the South, and brutal heat is searing much of the country, with more than 80 million Americans on alert now for dangerous high temperatures. Ginger Z has the latest for us. Hey, Ginger.
Kira, we have to talk about heat, but we also have to talk about severe storms. So let's begin in Birmingham, Alabama, where unfortunately a 3-month-old and a 3-year-old were killed in their home when a tree came right down into it. And this is the type of damage we see even with 60-mile-per-hour straight line winds just out of a thunderstorm. And we're going to see more of those as we go into the weekend. But tomorrow, there's actually a chance of that and tornadoes. And so if you're in western Wisconsin, Wausau's included, La Crosse, look at Minneapolis, Mankato, right on the state line of Iowa, too. We're going to be watching for severe weather to come through. Now, that's mid-weekend, but we have to talk about that heat today. Excessive heat warnings from the desert Southwest, heat advisories that stretch all the way up to Des Moines. That'll feel like 104, 100 Kansas City. And look in the Northeast. Here we go into a weekend and kind of middle of this heat wave that could end up being 7 days in a row of 90+ for New York City. If we get that, something we haven't done since 2013. On Sunday should be the hottest or the peak of the heat. Philadelphia could have an actual air temperature of 100. That could break a record. Boston could break a record. 97 expected in New York City, 98. Kira?
Ginger, thanks. Coming up, the latest in our hair loss series, examining why it happens and what we can do to stop it. That's after the break. Welcome back to ABC News Live. Well, President Biden's physician released a statement saying that Biden has completed his first full day of Paxlovid and his symptoms have improved after testing positive for COVID. His doctor saying that his pulse, blood pressure, respiratory rate, and oxygen saturation remain entirely normal. The United Nations says Russia and Ukraine have signed an agreement to restart grain exports out of Ukraine. The agreement would end Russia's blockade on exports in the Black Sea, which prompted fears of a global food shortage. The UN Secretary General saying in a tweet that the agreement will help avoid a food shortage catastrophe and is a beacon of hope, possibility, and relief. Now to our hair loss series, examining why it happens and what we can do to stop it. Our Amy Robach with more.
Whether it's a flat twist, a sew-in, or a twist out, 45-year-old Deshonda Matthews wears her hair with style.
When your hair is beautiful, you feel beautiful.
But her fashion-forward hairdos and a bout with anemia eventually took their toll, causing breakage on top, her part to thin, and her edges to creep back toward her skull.
The Bible talks about your hair is your glory. And when your most beautiful accent piece is suffering, it really does a number on you, on your psyche, your self-esteem.
Deshonda is not alone. Overstyling, overprocessing, and overhandling your hairline can put a strain on your hair, causing it to thin and break off over time, even pulling it out from the root. It happened to Courtney on Keeping Up with the Kardashians.
Oh my God, I'm afraid for your life. Have you seen that?
No, but I feel it. It's a hole in my head. I swear it's from my ponytail.
Courtney, you have to go to the hospital right now.
Colorist to the Stars Tracy Cunningham sees many issues in Hollywood, starting with overprocessing, including highlights and relaxers.
If your chemicals are too harsh on your hair, you can also have hair loss. Bleach and tones, that's not great for your scalp.
There's also traction alopecia, hair loss caused by repeated pulling on your hair. It can happen from tight ponytails, buns, braids, even hair extensions.
When you're pulling it too hard, the hair actually starts pulling out the follicle.
If caught early, it can be reversed, but it can also cause permanent hair loss.
Don't pull too hard. If you feel like your scalp is achy, don't do it. It's not good for your scalp. It's not good for your hair follicle.
Deshonda believed the braids were healthy for her hair.
They're not protective styles at all. They're actually styles that are actually damaging our hair.
Now she is on a 16-week styling break.
No chemicals, no heat, no pressing, no curling, just my natural hair.
Our hair is our glory. I love it. Amy, thanks for that. I'm Kira Phillips. ABC News Live continues with more news, context, and analysis. Stay with us. Much more ahead.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.